We're going to be looking at some of the sensors that you guys can use with your Cortex. So there's several sensors that I put in your toolbox. One of the biggest ones, this is the sonar sensor. We're not going to work on this one today. And then this one, the line follower, we're also not going to work on this one today. The ones we're going to start out with are these two, and that is the bumper switch, and this is the limit switch. These two are touch sensors, so they're going to require actually a physical touch input. The line tracker, this one here, or line follower, this is line tracker on the side there, but it's often called line follower as well. This is going to look for light. It checks to see how bright objects are. And then the sonar sensor, as you would expect, this one is picking up on sound, just like the sonar of a bat or the sonar that submarines use. So focusing just on the touch sensors right now, this is going to be a digital sensor that we're going to use. So if you take a look at your Cortex, you will see that on this side, there are some different ports over here, and these lower ports are labeled digital, and these upper ports are labeled analog. These two sensors that we're going to be using, the limit switch and the bumper switch, those are both digital sensors, so we're going to be plugging them in down here. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen that has Robot C so that you guys can see that. Okay, so here's Robot C, and we're looking at a couple of different programs, or 3 to be exact, programs that involve the bumper switch. The first one, I'm going to see if I can adjust that image. There we go. I like that a little better. So the first one is called Wait for Push 1, and then Wait for Push 2, and then there's Wait for Release. So in Wait for Push 1, this program instructs the robot to move forward at half speed until the bumper is pressed. There is a 2-second pause at the beginning of the program. So then if we scroll down, we're going to see the wait 1 millisecond, and then there's 2000. So that means wait for 2 seconds. And then we see while the touch sensor is 0, that means that the robot is going to keep doing that action as long as the sensor isn't pressed. The motors will both be set to 63. So let's go ahead and take a look at the motor and sensor setup here. So first it tells us that our touch sensor, and a touch sensor can be either the bumper switch or the limit switch. Either one of those is considered a touch sensor. That one is in digital port 6. It might look like it says digit 16, but this is actually an L here. So it's actually digital 6. And just to see how that works, I'm going to click on motor and sensor setup up here. And you can see if we look, there's the motors tab. Its right motor is in port 2, left motor is in port 3. These are the analog sensors. We don't have anything there. And then in the digital sensors, you can see this is digital 6 is where the touch sensor is. So that lowercase l looks like a 1, but that is actually supposed to be an L right there. So it's in port 6. My motors are in ports 2 and 3, which means that if they're not in 1 and 10, they're going to have to use motor controller wires. So I've already got my motors plugged in with motor controller wires to ports 2 and 3. You can take a look at that. So the next thing that we need to do is plug in our bumper, and we're going to be plugging that in to port 6. Now, I would say it's not easy. I'm going to unplug this battery so it's easier for me to hold this up. It's really hard, especially on this side, to count those holes. And I don't think that you're going to be able to see my pencil markings. But what I've actually done here, maybe you can kind of see the pencil markings. I've actually marked after the first 8 rows, I put 1 pencil mark to indicate that that's where the first 8, which are all analog ports, where those go. And then I counted down another 6 and underlined the holes where where port 6 is, so that I know where to plug that in. So I literally just took a pencil and counted down, and then just colored that row, that line right underneath those 3 holes, so that I can better see where I'm going to be plugging in. And I'm going to plug in right above this line that I've got drawn down here under where port 6 is. So I'm going to go ahead and start out with my bumper switch and plug that in. We're going to plug in the white wire, so that is on the side that has the little hook. And just slide that in. There we go. Okay, and that seems to be in the correct location. And now I can go ahead and put my battery back in, because I'm going to just leave this sitting here. You can see my robot light is red because the Cortex is still off, which is what we want before we download a program. Now I'm going to come over and go ahead and download this first program, because I've got my touch sensor in the correct location and I have my 2 motors in the correct location. So let's go ahead and click download to robot. And good. So it says VEX controller, main battery, not powered on. That's fine. Let's go ahead and power that on and click OK. You can see that my robot and VEXNet lights are turned on. The robot light is turned on because I have a charged battery. The VEXNet light is on because we're connected using the USB cable. Game is not on because we're not actively playing a game. This is only for if you're going to a competition, so don't worry about the game. Okay, now when we do this, we actually come to a window that's called the Program Debug window. This is where you can test out your sensors and see what readings you're getting on them. So what I can do is go ahead and press the start button, and it's going to start working through my code. So it has started. It waited the 2 seconds, and then it's going to keep running this loop. What that means is, as long as I don't touch my sensor, my motors are going to keep going. And you should see, or you're probably hearing, that the motors are turning right now. So let's see what happens when I actually press the touch sensor. So that worked. So the motors turned off after I pressed the touch sensor. And then at that point, we waited until that happened, and then there's no more code. So the program just ends. So that's why they just stop, and then they're not going to go again. The program is over. And so now if we want it to run again, we have to press start. Or if we go ahead and unplug our Cortex, we just need to turn off and turn on again. And oop, it sure didn't like that, did it? Let's turn off, plug back in. We're going to try downloading to the robot again. Okay, that seemed to be just fine. So I'm going to go ahead and unplug while the Cortex is still off, and then turn on. Definitely not liking that, is it? Oh, failed to verify serial link is connected. Okay, let's try this again. Sometimes it takes a little work. Okay. That's connected now. I'm going to close. And now I'm going to unplug. And now I'm going to turn on. Oof, still not liking that, huh? Okay. Well, I am going to continue on anyway with what the next actions are, and we'll see if we can solve that problem a little bit later. So I'm going to go ahead and click download to robot now. Okay. And turn on, and that seems to be okay. I wonder if maybe my battery is dead, and maybe that's why I'm getting some trouble, and this is only turning green because it's getting power from my USB. That might be what's going on. Oh, there it goes. Okay, so then it went ahead and ran that, and try off and on again. Let's see if it'll run that program. No, not running it again. Okay. Let's go ahead and press the start button. Oh, failed to start program. So, download to robot. Okay, here we go. And I'm going to go ahead and press start. Okay. And there's my touch sensor reading value of 0. I am surprised though that we're not, okay, yeah. And so then right here we're seeing power is 63. That's good. And then for my sensor, when I press the button, I want you to see what happens to the touch sensor. If you look right here at that 0. Okay, so when I pressed the touch sensor, then it was reading as 1, a value of 1. So then that made this loop no longer true, and so that's why it ended the program. What we can do to modify this program, we can change the direction, or we can change the speed of those. And then the next program that we can look at, this one is going to be, we're going to have the robot wait until the touch sensor is pressed, and then it will move forward for just 1.5 seconds. So if we look at this program down here, you can see that the while loop is actually the very, very first thing, because the first thing that we're doing is waiting. And then we're going to, it said that there was a 2-second wait, but I don't know. I don't see that happening in the program. Then the motor is going to turn on, and it's going to just turn on for 1.5 seconds. So that in milliseconds would be 1,500. Let's go ahead and try downloading this to our robot and see how it runs. Okay, there we go. And we're downloading actually just fine with the Cortex on, so that seems to be working. Sometimes I have trouble with a program downloading to the Cortex when it's on, especially when it's a program that I'm trying to use with my remote control. But since we're not using the remote control, downloading with it on seems to be working okay. I'm going to go ahead and press start, and our touch sensor is reading 0. And our motors are also reading that their power is 0. I'm going to go ahead and press my touch sensor. And when I touched that, we saw a value of 1. And then for 1.5 seconds, those motors were running. So let me show you that one more time, except on the motors tab down here instead of the sensors tab. So let's look at the power on those 2 motors. Start. Okay, we're just waiting for that touch sensor. I'm going to press the touch sensor, and then that changes the power here to be 63 for 1.5 seconds. just wish that there was a way to, to show both the motors and the sensors at the same time. You can't show both at once. So that's a little bit obnoxious, but you know, it is what it is. I'm gonna pin that back there so that it doesn't keep disappearing. But yeah, motors, sensors. Now, let's take a look at our very last program. Oop, that was not what I wanted to do. That was just downloading the program again. Let's go over to wait for release. So this one's a little bit different. In this one, we've still got our sensor in port 6 and our motors are in ports 2 and 3. What this program does, though, is it instructs the robot to move forward at half speed until the bumper is released. So we actually have to continue holding that motor. So first off, we're going to wait the 2,000 milliseconds. See, this piece of text, this was not in our second one here. There was no wait. So even though it says there's a 2-second pause at the beginning of the program, that actually is an error. There's not a pause at the beginning of this. For the wait for release, we're going to wait for 2,000 milliseconds while our sensor value is 0. It's not going to do anything. And then while the sensor is 1, it's going to do this, but nothing is going to happen after you remove your finger from the sensor. So that's what we're going to try to do now. Let's see how that works. Okay. So we'll go ahead and run that program first with our touch sensor showing, and then we'll run it again with our motor sensor tab showing. So for this one, I'll go ahead and press start. Okay. So touch sensor is reading 0, so nothing is happening. Now I'm going to go ahead and press my button. The motors start moving. I am still holding that button down. Oh, I think I let it go. Oh, all right, let's try that again. Touch, and they're gonna go. Still going. And release, okay. And now let's do that one more time, looking this time at the motor tab. Start, press the button. Oh, it must have not felt like it stuck very well. So let me try that again. Okay, now that's working. Because what I think happened just now, I think that was I maybe like pressed the button but didn't press it all the way, and so it just went right through, barely turning them on, and it didn't actually work. So yeah, just like that. So I think that might be what happened. If you're not getting a good connection on there, then it might just go straight through those motors turning on and go to the end. So those are a couple different ways that you can control things, motors turning on and off using the button switch. You can do all of those exact same things using your limit switch. So if you physically press on the button switch and the limit switch, you're going to notice the button switch actually takes quite a bit more force to use than the limit switch. So it's depending on really what your needs are. Maybe you need something that requires a lighter push, or maybe you're going to have a situation where something's going to turn and it's just going to hit this limit switch. Or maybe you're going to have a person just physically come up and press the button switch. It's just depending on what kind of a robot you're designing, whether you're going to want to use a limit switch or a button switch for a particular function, but you can program them exactly the same. So let's go ahead and program our limit switch in here. And I'm going to put that again right in the digital port 6. And we can start this program. And I can press my limit switch. And it works exactly the same. As long as I keep that pushed down, it will go. And then as soon as I release, the motor stop. So that's a little introduction to using the limit switch and the bumper switch.